Hey, Gunner Boy, this video is for you. So, I make all of my own cages for all my trapping. So this one here is my 7x7 by 24 single door powered conibear trigger. So, all it is, door frame made of 1/4 inch rod, a center bar in the middle of the door frame, and that is a Victor 1.5 coil spring, just a single one. This is a small chain link, it's a 1-inch chain link is what I use. This one I cut in half just so I didn't have anything hanging over the top of the trap. The leg of the spring sits inside of it, and the other leg of the spring is simply hog ringed onto the door. So that sets your door tension and it provides your power to close the door. Then you can see right here is the drop bar, just bent 90 degrees, and it sits over the edge of the door to hold it in place and hold it open. And that runs straight back, and on the end of that bar, another 90-degree turn, little washer welded on the end of it to keep the dog in place. On my 7x7s, which is a multi-purpose trap, I use these for mink, muskrat. I've caught small opossums and raccoons in them. I use I believe it's a 120 trigger and dog. So it hangs down pretty low in the cage. There's only about 1/2 inch underneath of the trigger. And there's another hoop back here. This one is only 3/4 frame, and it's hog ringed in place onto the cage wire. And that bar's only purpose is to hold the trigger, the actual trigger wires for the conibear. So this one, in the set position, you can see how it sits. Go ahead and doing it. Here we go. So that's how I build my single door 7x7s. And like I said, that's my multi-purpose trap for small fur bearers. Now, this one here is one of my specified beaver cages, and this is basically the exact same setup. The difference being there is a spring on each side of the door, and they go down onto the door frame. You can see the hog ring right there that holds the spring in place. So this would be one same thing, Victor 1.5 coil spring. When you buy these springs, they come in pairs because there's normally 2 on each trap. So this one has 1 pair of springs per door. And the other difference, as you can see in the back, this is a double door. So this is a swim through type trap. All the rest of the construction is exactly the same. The only other thing that's different is the drop bar here that does the exact same thing, just goes underneath the edge of the door to hold it up and in place when it's loaded. That is a T instead of a C shape. So I've just got another leg welded on, it comes all the way over to the dog and to the trigger. And the other leg of it goes all the way back and goes underneath of the back door or front door, whichever way you set it. So that one is the doubled power door. So to build this one, I use 4 of the 1.5 coil springs, 2 per door, and I run 330 triggers and dogs in these ones. And you can see there's quite a bit of room underneath of that trigger. Now, I do occasionally catch muskrats in this one, but predominantly I aimed this one being a specified beaver trap. And that amount of space underneath of the trigger. Even very small beavers, I've caught beavers in these down to like, you know, New Year kits that are about 5 pounds. They can't get through here without hitting that trigger. An otter can get around it, but I have also caught otters in these as well. You can lengthen those triggers out if you want to make sure that anything you pass through the trap is going to get caught. And what a lot of guys will do if they do a longer trigger, instead of just having a V shape like a standard conibear, they'll take about 2 inches of the wire and kink it in and actually form a triangle trigger. And those seem to work pretty well. So that's how my double door works. And this one in particular is 12 by 12 by 36. Some guys make them 40 all the way up to 48 inch, which those ones are more targeted towards otters. I find the 36 will do all of it, and I've never missed an otter. So, same exact thing. See if I can... There we go. That's how that one works. Now I make one other size. Like I said, this is the specified beaver cage. That one is the specified small fur bearers. This one, the big boy, is a 12 by 18 by 36. And this one I originally started building them multi-purpose, and they serve both purposes really good. If you have a really, really deep beaver run, you can cover 18 inches of water and then just throw a dive stick over the top, no big deal. Or you can turn it flat and cover a really wide, shallow run. I've also ran into some runs that were very wide and very deep, and I'll take 2 of these and stack them on top of each other. And I will usually pick up beavers in the bottom, and I will pick up muskrats in the top. Now, this one in particular, it's also a double door, but as you can see, I only have the front door set right now. So if I set it up vertically like this, 12 inches wide, 18 inches tall, 36 inches deep, triggers dead center, this is now a bobcat trap you can set on land. So all they have to do is walk inside and brush the conibear trigger, and the door will close in behind them. Just like so. And that's how I use those ones for multi-purpose, multi-species. The one other thing I didn't point out already, so every one of these cages has a door stop down in the corner. And all that does is your door is under spring-loaded tension where it's at, and when the door closes, it's got to have something to close against, otherwise we just flip all the way out and your animal will walk away. So on the single doors, I only put in one door bar or one door stopper. On the 12 by 12s, I put them in both corners, and on the 12 by 18s, I put them in both corners. So when I'm normally setting these up, I have another video where I had one of my door assemblies off, and you can go back and watch that one too. What I normally do, I weld the chain link on at a 45-degree angle to the door face. I set that spring in place, and I'll push the door in, and you don't have to push it. Actually, technically, you're pushing it out, because this leg of the spring will be out about like so. So you'd push the door out, hoggering that spring in place. Then I push the door back in. Now it's under spring tension. Like this one is under enough tension you can barely open it up with one finger. Most of my traps have about between 3 and 5 pounds of closing pressure on the door in the resting position. So once the springs are hog-ringed on, then I will load the door by pushing it back open, and that's when I weld in the corner bars. And then when the door comes back, it's set to its own tension and ready to go. And I build the frames out of 1/4 inch round stock. Most of it is scrap metal. One thing I would say I would like to change on my next generation of trap, this center square, you can see it's full square all the way across, that stiffens up the whole cage a lot. In the original design that I copied from Bruce Vandervoort, he actually had 5 squares all the way through the trap, and that his traps were much more rigid. And I have found that a big beaver, particularly a certain 55 and 56 pounder, if they fight this cage, it will end up C-shaped, because they'll plant their front and back feet and they'll arch their back in the cage and bend the whole thing. Now, Bruce's traps wouldn't bend, mine will, but I can literally just put my foot on this top square and push it back into square. So mine are a little bit weaker, but they use a little bit less material. So if you wanted a stiffer cage, you could go that route. Or what I've seen other guys do is from the front corner to the center and all the way back, they put in bars, so it's a complete frame of a cage that is then wrapped in wire. So you have a really stout frame and the wire is just expendable basically, because otters will tear this stuff up. So for my small cages, I run 16 gauge 1 inch by 2 inch 24 inch long rolls to make these, and small animals have no chance of getting out of that. These ones I build out of the same 1 by 2 measurement, but I build them out of 14 gauge, and this is, both of these are galvanized wire. And I do have an issue, I'll post some pictures up. There's a particular otter that I've been after for a year now, and he has broken out of one of these cages. He actually blew through the door, and that's why all of my doors now have 1 by 1 instead of the 1 by 2. And I have not had any breakouts. I may have caught that otter this year, but I don't know for certain. He was pretty big, but so that's one thing. There are guys that run even heavier wire than this, but as far as trapping here in Washington State, being always stuck with these cage traps during the trapping season, it's not a huge deal for me because I'm also a wildlife control operator. I can use footholds and conibears. But if I have to use cages, I want to make them as light as possible, because it is not fun packing these things through the brush. The one other thing that I'm going to change on my next generation of trap, before I figure out how to make it into a folder, this bar really should be 3/16 instead of 1/4 inch. And the reason I say that is 330s are built out of 3/16, so their trigger assembly is very loose fitting. So it's the one thing I would change. So there you go. That's how I build my cages.